Okay, so I wanted to talk about my overall vision for life planning and an analogy that I've been working on that explains how I view it. So so I'd like to share that, and then you guys can let me know if it makes sense or helps you guys understand kind of what I'm thinking, where I'm coming from. So basically, the analogy is you imagine you're living out in think like um, America when it was first colonized. You've got all the different settlers, the pioneers going around, and so you're one of them. You found this little area, 5 or 10 acres or so, and um, and that's where you settle down. So the first step to making your little homestead as productive as possible is you start observing around your property and look at all the plants that you already have, the stuff that's already part of your system, and you notice the good things and the bad things, and you decide which things you want to keep and which things you want to get rid of, which things you want to plant more of, and which things you want to eliminate, and you kind of make your own little area as efficient as possible for getting you the food and fuel and medicine that you're going to need. And then as you are doing this, you're going to spend a little bit of your time going outside of your property, going to different spots that you have found where you can gather more resources. Maybe there's a blueberry patch you can go and gather some blueberries from, or a little apple orchard, or things like that. So you go out of your property, gather resources, and bring them back into your property. And as you're doing this, some of these things you might think, maybe I should bring this onto my own property, put it into my system. So maybe next time you go and you get some apples and you take the seeds and you start planting your own apple trees in your own system. And then some things you're like, well, it's not really worth the hassle, so I'm just going to keep going out to gather them as opposed to growing them in my own property. And then after you've been gathering for a while, when you've got a little bit of extra time, then you can start to explore new areas, places you've never been before, to go see if there's more resources that you want, more things that you haven't ever discovered before. And so you go out there and you find some new things, and you can decide that's an interesting new thing. Maybe you find a strawberry patch and you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm gonna have to come back here and start gathering from this strawberry patch more. Or you find something that you think is really cool, like a cool maybe waterfall or rock formation or something, and you're just like, oh, that's really cool, but it's not something that I'm going to come back to gather resources from. It was cool to see, but not something I'm going to integrate into my system. And then you continually doing that, exploring more areas, gathering more resources, and bringing them onto your property and making your property as effective as possible. So the explanation for the analogy would be our lives, our schedules are like our little piece of property. We all are currently already doing things every day. We've got our routines, our habits, and just who we are at the start. So the first step, like cultivating our property, is to cultivate our schedule. We start to pay attention to it, start observing it, start eliminating things that we don't want to be doing, and start organizing the things that we do want to be doing so that it's as efficient as possible, so we can be getting the most out of our time, just as we were getting the most out of our property. And then the second thing we do when we've got some extra time is gathering. So like we would go out to gather the resources, we're going to go and learn about things that we're interested in, and try to figure out how we can implement them into our lives. And some things we'll just learn about and we think it's a cool subject, but it's not necessarily going to change our lives. It's just something that for now is just an interesting thing for us to learn about. And some things are going to be things that we learn about and we want to implement them into our lives, and so we kind of bring them back to our lives, like we brought the resources back to our property and integrated them into our own system. We made it into who we are. We grow as a person as we learn from these other sources. And then the third step is exploration, where we go and try and learn new things. So things that we've never heard of before, to see if there's anything that's interesting that we want to add to our interests, or things that we want to change who we become. So so as we do that, we'll start to explore new things. We'll start to gather the information that we like and bring it into our lives, and then we start to apply it to our lives to become better and better people. And we just continually learn more and grow more until our sphere of influence just gets further and further